to demonstrate this is in all of this chaos, if Bitcoin or crypto assets in general were truly a legitimate off-ramp and salvation from US dollar hegemony and all of this stuff, why isn't Bitcoin at least at 35,000 a coin right now? It's barely above 28,000. It really hasn't moved that much. And I think the real answer is that most people in Bitcoin are not trying to hedge their existing fiat currency exposure. They're just picking off people in retail.
Hey guys, welcome back to Library of Wealth. Today we have Chamath from the In Podcast, giving his thoughts on the current state of the economy, the Fed's excess money printing, and the impact of Bitcoin on a global scale. While acknowledging the importance of having winners and losers in a well-functioning society, Chamath criticizes the Fed's current practice of printing money to create a society without either. He says this practice reinforces the US dollar's dominance and increases other countries' dependence on it in times of stress. One of the key failures reported of the Fed recently was risk management. For nearly a year, central bank leaders have aggressively hiked interest rates to curb inflation. While this may have been the right policy decision, it placed stress on the banks. The Fed did not test banks last year to check if they were handling this headwind, and Chamath has pointed out the recent banking crisis has shown us the consequence of that. Let's check out the latest interview with Chamath and the In Podcast. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. It's a tremendous help for the growth of the channel and helps us bring you more content just like this.
MMT
Yes, I am.
was, in hindsight, idiotic. In the moment, it never quite made sense, but in hindsight, it's clearly idiotic, and I think that we can properly dispense with that. But the reason that we print so much money is sort of what Freeberg says, which is that we just want a well-functioning society. And the simplest and shortest way to do that is to make sure that there aren't any winners and losers anymore. And the most effective way to do that in the markets is with money. Print a bunch of money and there are no more winners and losers. And so everybody can kind of win. Some people may win more, but nobody really ever loses. So I think that's the MO that we're operating under. The thing is, I don't think that...
There's something unhealthy to that, Chamath. You're sort of alluding to
but
no losers.
That's a more philosophical and a commentary on capitalism and a bunch of other things. And you're right, I don't think it makes sense. I do think you need winners and losers to really make society function well. But the other part of it is, like, does it reinforce or does it decay US dollar hegemony? And I think it actually reinforces it. And the reason is just very practically speaking, when you look at how dependent other people, other countries are on the US dollar, in times of stress, they actually become more dependent. And that has a lot to do with their borrowing patterns, the amount of dollars central banks need outside the United States. And so what did you see in a moment of stress? Actually, the Fed opened up swap lines to all the central banks that they work with, their most important operating partners, so Europe, Canada, Japan, etc., Switzerland. And they moved the liquidity window from weekly to daily, and they pounded the swap lines. So I don't know. I think that most people that kind of like, it's like a boy crying wolf. Maybe at some point somebody will be right, but you're going to lose so much money trying to take a point of view around this topic that it's more practical to just look at dollar flows. And dollar flows go up in moments of stress, not go down. And they go up in a distributed manner across the monetary plumbing of the world.
Chamath also shares his thoughts on the connection between Bitcoin and rumors about FTX getting SEC approval before going out of business. He believes that this connection distracts us from more important topics, such as the fragility of the financial system and the development of systemic shocks.
Yeah, it's the latter. I mean, I think that there was a rumor going around, I don't know how true it is, that FTX was days away from getting a critical approval by the SEC to actually even further legitimize their US exchange before they went out of business. So I think Gensler had to pivot very hard from, at a minimum, being very pro FTX, and there's all kinds of stories about his interrelatedness with Sam and his family, to very anti-bit or anti-crypto in general. That's clearly happened. But look, I think that this is like a lot of tin hatting, which I don't think is very productive. If you look at the total number of non-zero Bitcoin wallet addresses in the world, and let's be extremely generous, and say it's 100 million. There's still 7 billion people in the world. And so I just think everybody that tries to speak about the fragility of the US and worldwide banking system is right. And that part I think is quite lucid and unemotional. But every time they try to connect it to Bitcoin, they sound like a crazy person because they're just talking their book.
And that is exactly the case, by the way, with this kid, Nick Carter. Yeah.
And the best example to demonstrate this is in all of this chaos, if Bitcoin or crypto assets in general were truly a legitimate off-ramp and salvation from US dollar hegemony and all of this stuff, why isn't Bitcoin at least at 35,000 a coin right now? It's barely above 28,000. It really hasn't moved that much. And I think the real answer is that most people in Bitcoin are not trying to hedge their existing fiat currency exposure. They're just picking off people in retail. And they're just day trading this thing. How else do you explain an asset that is not absolutely ripped in the face of all of this terrible news about the financial system? And I think the answer is because it's still a cul-de-sac of users. It's not broadly available, not broadly adoptable, not broadly used. I still believe that it's valuable. I was the earliest proponent of Bitcoin, 2011.
Yeah.
2012. So I believe that there's a place for it in one's portfolio, but I just think connecting these dots misses the point. And I think the point is much, much bigger than a crypto off-ramp. The point is that we have a lot of systemic shocks that are building up in the system. We have broken a ton of the systems that cause the financial infrastructure and the world to work properly, and we are just starting to uncover how they're broken. So I think we need to focus our energy on that and dial down a little bit of the Bitcoin maxi stuff because it distracts from a really important set of topics that are more inclusive and actually touch 7 billion people. My point is, put this in the who cares bucket and get back to the facts. Friedberg mentioned it. We have a debt ceiling problem that's in the offing. Sachs mentioned it. We have a commercial real estate crisis. We just talked about the fact that he didn't raise rates enough, nor did he cut enough. So we're in this weird middle path that Jay Powell we're talking about. So those are the facts on the ground that I think we should focus on because those will have implications to how people can borrow, start businesses, capitalize risk assets. That's a big problem.
Chamath questions why Bitcoin is not valued higher than its current price, if it's supposed to be a legitimate off-ramp from the US dollar hegemony. He suggests that most people in Bitcoin are not hedging their fiat currency exposure, but instead day trading and picking off people in retail. Chamath believes Bitcoin and crypto assets have a place in one's portfolio in general, but people should not overemphasize it. Instead, he suggests we should focus on more inclusive topics such as the debt ceiling problem, the commercial real estate crisis, and the middle path taken by Jay Powell. He says these topics have significant implications for borrowing, starting businesses, and capitalizing risk assets in the market. What do you think about Chamath's market prediction for 2023, as well as his perspective on Bitcoin in the current economic landscape? Comment down below. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is the Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.